All right. Well, once again, we are here for a golden path to SpringOne. My name is Nate Shuda. I work for VMware. I'm delighted to be joined today by Kevin Clark. Hello, Kevin. How you doing?
Hey Nate, how's it going?
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, I don't want to get in the way of your presentation, having gotten the sneak peek in the pre-show. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's bring in your slide deck. And now the way we typically do this, we want you to comment along as we go. Please ask questions and we will talk about them at the end. And the way Kevin wants to approach this, he's going to go through his deck and then we'll take some time when everything is over to do a little bit of Q&A. So please interact with us, talk to us, and we'll see what kind of trouble that gets us into. But without further ado, Kevin, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you. Have a great show.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. Hey, everyone. Thanks for spending some time with us today, and thanks for joining this talk about 5 simple rules about problems. Let's take a walk through here. So first off, some introductions. I'm Kevin Clark. I am a senior manager for product management in our Tanzu Labs business in public sector in the United States. Let's start off a little bit with what is Tanzu Labs. We are a customer success organization. I work within the app services part of that business, where we help our public sector customers build and modernize applications to really drive mission outcomes to help make our country better, to make our government better. Part of the reason that I love this work is that we get to help public servants take better control of the technology that they're building to make things more accountable, more efficient, and more democratically supportive of the goals of the government in the first place. That's really exciting. And how we do that is through our decades of experience as an agile software consultancy, really at the forefront of XP, TDD, CI/CD innovation, a lot of lean product thinking and user-centered design. These are the things that come together to help us build teams alongside our customers that can make the best use of Tanzu products, use Spring, use all these different pieces that we bring to the table and help those teams really go fast forever. Those 3 legs of the stool that I mentioned, the XP, the software engineering, the user-centered design and that design role, and the lean product management thinking, those are what we call a balanced team. And a big part of making those teams be as effective as possible is helping them be hyper collaborative, hyper communicative, and laser focused on the most important thing at all times. So that gets to how we sort of think about lean in a lot of ways, and why I've put this talk together in the way that it's put together, and how I find these lessons to be really helpful in how we deliver software together. Thinking about one of those lean principles, if you go back to thinking about the classic lean text coming out of Toyota, one of those principles is reduce waste, trying to minimize waste. We're trying to reduce the unnecessary work that teams might be doing, and we're doing that through a laser focus on priority. These rules that we're going to talk about today are tools for doing specifically that. This is about how we reduce waste, how we simplify things, how we get rid of work that might be a distraction for our teams. So why simple rules? Why are these simple rules? Why not complex rules? Business is complex, software is complex, the decisions we make are complex. So why not do complex rules? But we're also very, very busy people. Complicated tools take a long time to get out and use. We need simple things that are flexible, that we can use in a lot of different contexts. Okay, so for me, for a conference talk, usually what I take away from an hour-long conference talk can just be a couple of slogans. That question that we always ask, what are the takeaways? What are those simple ideas that you can bring and make use of in different parts of your business? It's not because we're being reductionist that we ask this question of like, hey, that was a cool talk, what's the one takeaway? It's because we need an idea that's sort of big enough to be interesting, but small enough to be generalizable to a wide range of business situations. We need something that we can remember, that we can pull out of our pocket and use in a conversation, in a decision-making context, to check to see if there's some help that it's going to drive for us. So what I've done today with these 5 simple rules is organize this talk entirely around just those things. These are going to be slogans that you can use, they're sound bites, they're rules that you can produce inside conversations like tools to help your team, to help your organization avoid work that might be a distraction. These rules they're tools like a hammer, they're like a kitchen knife. They can do a lot of different things, but they got to be simple, they got to be easy to handle. So there are a couple other things that these things need to be. They need to be uncontroversial. It needs to be something where when you say it in a conversation, people are going to agree with the basic observation you're making and be able to move forward, right? When there's an idea on the table that you think might not be a good one to move forward with, you don't want to attack the person proposing it. You want to highlight some reality of that conversation that maybe people aren't seeing that can help the team move forward. This is about non-confrontational, obviously true facts that are hard to argue with that we can use to help move our teams forward. So I'm going to give you 5 tools. I'm going to give you 5 takeaways in a shorter talk. Let's dive in. And please do ask questions along the way. If you're curious about how any of these work, or you have a question about how to use one of these in a different context, jump in. It'll be great. Okay, rule 1. Only solve problems that you have. This rule is incredibly easy to break. Have you ever heard someone say, oh, we should build this now in case we decide to do this other thing in the future? Or if the business decides to do X, we'll be glad that we did this. Or even, this is just coming up in a couple of quarters, let's get ahead of it now. It's very easy to over-engineer all kinds of things. It's very easy to be looking at problems that you don't actually have yet and try to solve them too early. By the time that problem actually comes up, we're probably going to know more about it than we do now. If you work with a Tanzu Labs team, you're going to have conversations about maximizing your test coverage. You're going to have questions about, or conversations about, taking the possible effort to get to that next step, to get something out into the world, to get feedback from users, to see what the market signal is, and then take it from there for that next step of innovation, so that we're solving the problems that we have as we have them, and that we don't want to over-engineer. We don't want to build for problems that we don't have yet. Similarly, we don't want to build for problems that somebody else has. You also don't want to say, oh, our competitor has this problem, let's act as if we have this problem. We don't want to solve problems that we don't actually have. So this is one where you could say, only solve problems that you have, and it reminds people, oh, wait a minute, yeah, this might be a problem that I don't have, that someone else has it instead, or maybe that I'm not going to have yet, that's not going to be there until the future. And by then, we'll know a lot more information, and that'll help us. And don't solve problems that you don't actually know that you have. Don't solve problems that you think you have, right? You want to make sure you actually do have it. Don't solve problems that only hypothetically exist. Solve the problems that you have right now. That you have right now. Because there are plenty of those. Once you've solved all of those, then we could talk about the ones that maybe are coming next. There's a lot of different kinds of waste that can come out of this too. Like, you could be doing too much architecture work up front. You could be building features for users that you haven't acquired yet. You could be serving a customer base that you hope to serve but don't actually have. There are all sorts of different things that can look aspirational and that can look forward-thinking, but that maybe you don't actually want to spend a lot of time on those because there's something right in front of you that should really be taking your focus. That's rule 1. Rule 2, solve one problem at a time. This one is probably the most familiar to a lot of Agile software practitioners, right? We talk about the WIP limit a lot. Keeping that WIP limit down is important, but this covers a little bit more than that. There is only one top of the backlog, and it can often feel like when there's a lot going on, we want to have multiple priorities, we want to have multiple focuses. One of the things we do in labs is that we do a lot to let a team focus on one problem at a time. We do full 100% allocation. Everybody working on that team has no other jobs. We clear distractions away from the team. We try to empower that team to deliver everything, to have everything it needs to deliver outcomes through software all by itself, autonomously, without taking dependencies on others. And that's one of the things that helps the teams that we build be as effective as they are, because there's really only one goal, That focus is so valuable, particularly in a large organization. You want to resist the temptation to solve two things at once. So even if you've got a solution that you think does two things, one of them is going to be more important than the other. And as a whole team having this conversation, knowing which one is more important is going to help everyone make the right decisions as you implement that solution. The word priority actually didn't have a plural form in the English language until about 100 years ago. Now we talk about our priorities, but that wasn't a thing until like 1925. One priority. There's only ever one. Humans are really, really bad at multitasking because multitasking isn't actually a thing. Multitasking is just switching back and forth constantly between multiple things. And that switching itself is expensive, and you want to not do it. Those multiple priorities that can come in from elsewhere also wind up causing a team to thrash, right? If the team doesn't have a single priority, or the stakeholders are asking for a complicated set of multiple things, having one on top is going to make everything better. If you're having trouble having this conversation, you could switch from what's the number one priority to what should I do now? Because that question of like, when we stop having this conversation, I'm going to go type code and ship it. What should I do next? That can really help clarify some things. No one consciously disagrees with this. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I want to solve 5 problems simultaneously today. I want to multitask all day long. No one says that when they wake up in the morning. But when you sense your team starting to break this, trying to do too many things at once, try saying it out loud. Can you pick the one single problem that you should be solving right now? Does everyone on the team know and agree what that problem is, that most important problem? Does everyone know how we're going to solve that problem? How we're going to do that one thing? If you can answer yes to all of those questions, you have an amazing team doing great work. And if not, trying to go make those answers be yes is probably going to be really valuable. So, solve one problem at a time. Rule 3, problems are things that people have. This is my favorite of the 5. I put it at number 3, but this is my favorite. Problems are things that people have. Not computers, people. Computers don't have problems. They can be broken, but it's only a problem if it's bothering someone. Businesses might have problems, but really that problem can be best understood through the lens of the people who are experiencing pain as a result of that problem. Okay, so what does this mean? How do we use it? For example, keeping your cache in sync with your database. I encountered this on a team a couple of years ago. There was some syncing issues that we were a little bit challenged by. And we didn't know quite how to prioritize solving it. It wasn't really causing pain for our customers. What should we do? Is this more important than adding new features? I don't know. And it turned out that we decided it wasn't a problem until we found a person who was actually experiencing pain. Then you can go and solve it because you can prioritize it against the pain being experienced by other people as a result of other problems. One other thing that this does, understanding problems through the lens of the people that are experiencing that pain, is it simplifies alignment conversations and prioritization conversations across technical and non-technical audiences, across the team and its stakeholders, across all different kinds of groups, because everyone understands people. A highly technical challenge can be best explained through how it causes a problem for a human. That tells me why the problem's important. It tells me the scope of it. All different kinds of over-engineering, per se, can be addressed by asking this question, by helping to prioritize how much focus do we want to assign to this, because we can see how important it is out in the world by using the lens of people to understand the problem. Great questions like, do you need 5 nines of uptime or 3 nines? Or even for some systems, 1 9? Is 1 9 enough? There are some things that don't need to be as available as other things. And there are some things that must be hyper available at all times, or a person is going to have a huge problem. Tech debt is also a great one to use with this. Problems are things that people have rule. It can be difficult to prioritize a certain piece of tech debt work on a team, paying that tech debt down against other kinds of work. But if you ask the question, who is inconvenienced by this, then you're going to find a way through. It doesn't need to be a customer. It doesn't need to be a user. It can be you, the team. It can be a stakeholder. It can be you, a developer, you, the product manager, anybody. But that person who might not be able to move quickly because there's this tech debt living in the application, that's the way that you want to understand this. So problems are things that people have is a great way I've found to focus a conversation from something that might be detecting something that seems like imperfect in sort of a purely theoretical sense. It makes it concrete. And it lets you decide whether or not you really want to care. Let's take a look at number 4. Solve a problem once at most. At most. When you're done, stop. Here's an example of how this can go wrong. Let's say your application has some performance challenges. So you assign a team to work on performance. And they keep working on performance. And then after about 6 or 7 months, performance is great. Performance is fine. Performance problem solved. But they're still going. They're the performance team. They like performance. They're excited about performance. They want to talk about performance. But maybe the problem's done. Maybe a target for how good the performance is, ties back into outcomes-driven roadmaps, which are a great topic for another time. Maybe that performance problem got solved, and maybe those resources could go someplace else now, and those people could work on something that's still a problem. This also really happens, people break this rule when there's a problem that arises that people really care about, that's really upsetting, that's really challenging, that's really difficult. And they'll want to say this: I didn't like that situation so much that I want to stop it from happening ever again. So I'm going to not just solve it once. I'm going to put belt suspenders. I'm going to implement process changes. I'm going to make absolutely sure this can never happen again. And that's often going to result in slowing a team down. It's going to result in slowing down your ability to deliver because you've implemented too many solutions. Like wearing 5 seatbelts. Actually, 1 is the right number of seatbelts. 5 is too many seatbelts, right? You don't want to solve a problem twice just because it was painful the first time around. You want to make sure it's solved and then move on. Now, other problems don't actually need to be fixed in any way. Solve a problem once at most. None times is a great number of times to solve a problem. A lot of things just go away on their own, or they might not be that bad, or maybe they don't need to be solved by you. Maybe they need to be solved by somebody else. One of the biggest sources of sort of that feeling of overwhelm for people in tech companies is that everything is on fire, and we feel like we need to deal with all of it. But everything is always on fire. Everything is always going to be on fire. It's business. It's emergencies all the way down. Our job isn't to put out all of the fire. It's to put out a very specific subset of high priority fire. That's what we're doing. So the best number of plans to have to solve a problem is 1. The second best number of plans to have is 0. All other numbers of plans are much, much worse. Solve a problem once at most also keeps you from running 4 parallel plays to solve a problem that are going to conflict with each other and confuse everybody. Solve a problem once at most is about executing 1 solution to 1 problem once, and that's it. But when you say this in a conversation, solve a problem once at most, it's going to be hard for people to disagree. And it's going to help avoid unnecessary work. And now, rule number 5. Only solve problems. I know several people who use these rules in a lot of different conversations, and this one tends to be followed in their minds with a comma and an individual person's name, because people feel this one pretty deeply. Only solve problems, Kevin. It's for me. It can be tempting to solve a lot of stuff. It can be tempting to do a lot of things. A lot of things look important. A lot of solutions seem interesting. But if we're spending effort on things that aren't actually problems, that aren't actually problems that we have, that aren't problems that people have, then we're probably wasting our time. It can be tempting to do a lot of extra work once something's no longer a problem. It can be tempting to solve things that are basically fine. Only solve problems is a great way of helping a group of people who are having a conversation about one of these options to remind themselves in a non-confrontational way whether or not something's a problem, whether or not something's worth doing. Only solve problems isn't something you say to somebody in an accusatory way. Hey, only solve problems. It's something you say, hey, only solve problems. Are we doing this right? Are we working on something that's actually a problem? There are a couple different ways that this could happen too that are like specific examples within the context of a team. It could be easy to build features that the users might not actually require. Right? There might not actually be a need that customer has, that user has. So maybe we don't need to build that. We could be refactoring an application in a way that doesn't actually help the team go faster, but it makes some things sort of conform better in the system. We want to help the team go faster, but if there's not really a problem, we probably should spend time on things that are problems, because there, as we all know, there are definitely plenty of problems out there in the world. Those are my 5 rules. Thank you so much for spending some time. I hope these are practical tools for you. I use these a lot to help the teams that I work with be as focused as possible and to help Tanzu Labs deliver for our customers and for the citizens of the United States. I hope they're as helpful for you as I find them. Hey, Nate, how's it going?
You're good, Kevin. Thank you. So we did have one comment from Simon. Good to see you there, Simon. Hello and indeed. Don't shoot yourself in the foot by running before you walk. In fact, I'd even go back to the stage of crawl, then walk, then run. I mean, I've certainly tried to do this in my past, where you get so excited about something, you're like, we got to go, 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 go. Like, you got to give yourself some time to absorb that and get prepared.
Yeah. One of the things that I love the most about working in a TDD XP Labs environment is the discipline of the single prioritized backlog. It says there is one story at the top of the backlog, and it has acceptance criteria, and we're going to write a test first to see if we haven't already delivered that functionality, and then we're going to write as little code as possible to make that test pass, to deliver that piece of vertical value to the user. It gives you a lot of small goalposts. It gives you a lot of small wins. A thing I don't talk about that much in this talk, but that's extraordinarily important, is knowing what that next milestone is, what that next success looks like. And in our software development world, that becomes an essential part of how the team picks up and delivers software, how we build applications, how we ship code. But it also applies to everything else, right? Like, you don't want to pick up a task and not know what done looks like.
Right.
And that rigor that says we can come to work calm, pick the top story off the backlog, deliver it, do it over and over again, play some ping pong, do it over and over again, have some lunch, do it over and over again, play some ping pong, do it over and over again, leave at 6. Right? That focus of all I need to do is find the right thing to do it, and then repeat, and then go home at the end of the day. And that's actually a great way to stay calm, to stay focused, to stay relaxed, to stay collaborative. But it depends on that clear definition of success for every task that we pick up. And if we could give that to ourselves the same way that we as product managers give that to developers, our worlds get a lot easier.
Right. Well, and it gives you that sense of accomplishment. You pat yourself on the back. It builds up momentum.
Hmm.
I think we've all been on those projects that just seem to go on and on and on and on, and
Yeah.
it's without having those intermediate sort of goalposts, it can be soul sucking, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but that to me is the way we would approach so many things in the non-software world. If someone came to you and said, "Oh, my goal is to run a marathon," the first thing you would do is not let's go run 20 plus miles. I mean, unless you're
Yeah.
Phil Ray, then he probably would because he's an ultra marathoner kind of guy. But for the
Yeah.
rest of us, you're gonna maybe run a 5K and you're
Mhm.
going to build up to that audacious goal. And
Mhm.
software is no different. I mean, the software we're building is huge and complex.
Yeah.
You don't sit down on day one and let's write the whole thing. You're like, okay, what's the most important thing for us to do today?
Yeah. It's another thing it does is it limits the cognitive load that you have to carry to do any particular
Yes.
task. It means that I only have to remember enough to fix the toilet. I don't need to remember the whole architecture of the office building. I
Right.
can just do one task and then do the next task and then do the next task. And there's this sort of underlying belief in how we build software that pretty much everything in life can be reduced to a series of simple things.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and that assertion of simplicity in software and beyond is so powerful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it prevents you from being overwhelmed as well. So
Mhm.
if you focus on the problem and not thinking what you can address additionally or how to build your solution more flexibly,
Ah,
are you not facing the situation where, oh no, now we've got a new requirement we didn't know
yes,
about, or we need to
yes,
make a change? And this is always that classic line we're trying to walk, right? We don't want to paint ourselves into a corner,
right.
but we don't want to be in Yagni land either.
Yeah, so this is the question that you should be asking yourself as a team, and this is where like I didn't say build only tiny things and ignore the future, right?
Right.
I said solve problems that you have, solve problems that you know, like solve problems when you know the thing, right? Because you want to wait until the future if you're going to be able to learn enough information that you're going to be able to build a better solution. Potential self corner painting that you might back yourself into a corner, that's absolutely a problem. But as I like to put that Yagni land, you ain't gonna need it is what Yagni stands for. For those of you keeping score at home, the avoiding that is a big deal.
Right.
Hopefully, these rules can help you have that right conversation on the team, where you're not building all this Yagni stuff, but where you are also staying aware of the future, staying aware of what's coming, as much as is appropriate, right? Like, and
Mhm.
that's where we need smart people on teams who can balance these things correctly, because it's endless comparisons of apples and oranges. It's endless decisions
Right.
with insufficient information. It's important that you balance those things.
Right. Well, and I think it's to your point, Kevin, bringing your experience to know where that flexibility is more likely to be needed. I
Hmm.
mean, I've certainly in the past kind of gold plated some things with lots of extras that, oh, this would be really great. Oh, we'll need this. And 9 times out of 10, I was wrong. And as you gain some experience, you start to get a sense of, well, no, this is more likely to change. I ran into a situation, this little kind of play app I've been building, and I recognized after I was fairly far along, oh, well, the way I've done this means you can't change this later. There can't be two of these.
Hmm.
And actually, there could be now that I think about it. Now, for my purposes, I could have just left it that way, but that would then sort of paint me into being at a point where I've got hundreds of rows and they all don't have this relationship. And now putting that in there is much more work than doing it at this stage of what I'm
Hmm.
building. And so it's kind of knowing when is the right time to have
Yeah.
that flexibility to go, I better bake that in now when it's a fairly easy change as opposed to this is going to bite me in a few months.
Yeah, I think I like the definition of architecture that says an architectural decision is one that's hard to reverse.
Yeah.
It's not about what kind of technology you're picking up, it's about how difficult it is to reverse the decision.
Right.
And the same way that when we build software teams, we optimize for uh, incredible collaboration and incredible focus. When we build software, we optimize for incredible confidence to make changes, right? We want all changes to be easy. We want to leave
Right.
as many paths open with how we build, with how we commit, with how we make long-term decisions, with how we very rigorously test,
Hmm.
right? So one of the things you can do is to be careful about how you're balancing Yagni land and not, and use that experience to make decisions about when things are really going to come up in the future,
Right.
or maybe they won't. But you can also, because everyone is terrible at predicting the future, we're just very bad at that.
Yes, we are.
You can build in such a way that easy changes, or that more changes in the future are easy, independent of what they are. And really strong test coverage is a big part of that.
Yeah. It gives you that confidence to make the changes you needed. And
Exactly.
I would call that like evolutionary architecture. How
Yep.
do you design an architecture that has that as a core concept, that this will evolve and change? And this is a great question. So one of my coworkers copy and pasted. It was fast.
Yeah.
And I got in trouble for removing duplicated code. Now, I got to tell you, I'm allergic to duplication like that. When I see the same pattern over and over again, I probably spent 45 minutes yesterday refactoring, because I had these 4 blocks that when I was working on the features, I'm just going to do this, bam, 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 bam. Okay, now that I got that working, let's refactor that, because I just hate seeing everything's the same except this one line, this one line, this one line. So I refactored it.
Yeah. So I don't have nearly enough information to cast a judgment on if it was the right decision or the wrong decision, right? Like,
Yep.
Maybe that was the only way to get the demo ready to go up on stage at Worldwide Developer Conference, and Tim Cook points at it and says it's amazing.
Right.
Maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's a working agreement on your team that governs this sort of behavior, that says how we want to talk to each other about this. Maybe there's a way that you think about testing that says, you know what, our test suite is strong enough that if there's a problem, we'll catch it. There aren't going to be any introduced bugs, so we can afford to make that decision. Maybe there's a team agreement on your team that says we will refactor consistently to make sure that we're naming things in this consistent way, and to make sure that all the code is equally readable by everyone on the team. Mm-hmm. Maybe that behavior that you caught did in fact introduce a bug. Maybe your test suite did or didn't catch it, right? And if there's something that where everyone did what they thought was right and you had a problem that you didn't expect, that's a great thing to bring to a retro. That's a great thing to have a conversation about. Hey, what one thing, solve it once, what one thing can we do to not have this problem again?
Right. That does lead to one of my questions. You started with that idea of, again, not getting too speculative, basically. Yeah. How do you approach people on your team that continue to kind of engage in that and keep sort of, but I'm going to need this, I'm going to need this. How do you help rein people in without sort of stomping on their creativity? And we want to think about the way things might change, but how do we help people stay within the proverbial lines?
I think having an understanding among the people on that team about when's the right time to think about the big and when's the right time to think about the small,
right,
is really valuable. And having some language around that, because sometimes it's future versus present, sometimes it's whole organization versus small team, sometimes it's software platform versus individual feature. Sometimes it's things that might happen or that we want to happen versus things that we expect to happen. There are a lot of different ways to zoom in and out.
Right.
So that person who's having all those ideas, they want to bring that energy to the team. They want to help that team be successful. Mm-hmm. It can be hard facilitative work to reach a really good shared understanding of what success looks like and how we're going to get there, and what's important or what isn't. And it involves, when you sense a misalignment, it involves digging in and not pulling back and not trying to paper it over. And those can be really difficult human moments. They can be really challenging conversations. You can have real disagreements that you need to actually work through. But once you've done that, just like in any other relationship in your life, when you have a really good understanding of like, here's how thinking about retirement for our relationship is going to help us versus here's how thinking about the groceries is going to help us. Mm-hmm. Then you can balance talking about those two things in a way that's not going to make the other one think that you're not worrying about what's really important, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where that conflict comes in.
Right.
So work towards that real shared understanding of a goal, and then refer back to that understanding. Mm-hmm. And that'll help you not necessarily shut someone else down. It'll help you collaborate more effectively. It'll help you find the good stuff in each other's ideas.
Right. Well, and hopefully that's the kind of thing that we would talk about in a retro, where we'd be able to bring it up. Hey, 3 times now we've kind of painted ourselves again into that corner. Maybe we need to be thinking a little more long term, or just far enough ahead, right? I always think about that from an architecture perspective. Part of my job was always to be just ahead of what the team needed, but not overbuilding to the point of, oh yeah, no, we can support 10 million concurrent users and we only have 20 people.
Yeah, I've seen that one a lot of times.
Yeah.
Because people get excited about building for 10 million users, and there's still something like lurking in their brains about the days 15 years ago when the internet would happen to your consumer-facing app, and then you'd like hit the top of Hacker News, and your app would also crash on the same day,
Right.
and you'd hate your life.
Right.
So again, that's what people are preparing for, but that's a problem that they had 15 years ago.
Right.
Scale is a very different conversation than it was back then.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it took so much longer to get capacity. I mean, I still have nightmares about how long it would take to request an app server or a database. It would be, in some cases, months later, they finally got around to giving you that capacity. And so, we needed to be a bit more speculative because it was going to take 6 months if we needed more capacity. So let's take what we think is worst case and double it, and then better add a little more just in case. And, we have newer tools now and better techniques.
Yeah, I mean, that gets to why working in this way and being a really effective software team demands really good tools. Because if you're going to live in that world where a software team inside a large enterprise is empowered to drive outcomes through software, they can unblock themselves, they can do the things they need to do to get to production with confidence that they're not going to break anything, and with high levels of compliance and security, right? You need tooling that supports that practice.
Mm-hmm.
But the main obstacle to success in a software organization is, can teams ship to prod? That's the biggest problem. You can understand so many things that are challenging for an organization by tracing through the path to production and understanding all of the challenges on that path.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like to say our job is to get code to production reliably and repeatably.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kevin, I could talk to you about software for, I don't know, at least another hour or so, but I think we've already gone over our time. I do apologize for that. I'll have to try to get you on my Twitch stream, and then we can just ramble about software for as long as we feel like it. And
sounds great. I feel like we'd have a good podcast.
I'll reach out on that one. I think that'd be a lot of fun. Well, in the meantime, I would like to mention, of course, that, oops, sorry, wrong banner. This is what happens when I click without thinking. Sorry, Flora. Spring Academy. If you want to learn more about Spring, if you're looking to even get yourself certified, we can help. So go ahead and check that out. You can see Josh's smiling face. And of course, no discussion of Spring would be complete without us talking about SpringOne, which will be part of VMware Explorer this year in August in Las Vegas. We hope to see you there. But I think we can go ahead and call it a day. I thank you so much, my friend, and we'll get you on the BCAC here at some point in the near future.
Awesome. Thanks, Nate. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.